Welcome to Kaz's Literary Connection. This afternoon we are fortunate to have with us author Alan Mussell, who will talk briefly about his novel, The Last Crusade. Alan, I read your novel and found it to be most interesting and informative, and I do feel that it would be of great interest to those who enjoy this genre. I know your work is an historical novel. Can you tell us some about the historical setting?
Yeah, thank you, Kaz. Yes, I'd be glad to. Thank you very much. The historical setting is medieval. It opens in the year 1212 in an area called Languedoc in what is now southern France. It is wrapped around some crusade, the Albigensian Crusade, which was a violent period in French history in which the king and the pope sought to eradicate a heretical sect of Christians known as the Cathars. The setting then moves to the Children's Crusade in the valley, coming down to Marseille, and then shifts setting to Egypt. The Fifth Crusade is the setting behind the events there, and it ends in the Holy Land, where the Knights Templars and the Hospitallers become involved in the story.
What got you into writing about this period of history?
I was always interested in the Children's Crusade, and I began to research the legends, trying to find out what was true about them and what was not. I became enamored with a theory by a British writer named Karen Armstrong, who believed that they weren't really children per se, they were entire families dispossessed on the march in France. And I used that theory as my own theory. So once my characters were, in fact, shoved out of their sight, they joined the Children's Crusade, and for a short period of time. That was the initial impetus. But the novel began to take over, and as I was writing, it began to call the shots. In other words, through research, through the ideas I had, the events began to unfold almost without my will. The novel took over, in other words.
And are your characters historical people who actually lived?
Not the main characters. All the historical people were famous people that lived in that period of time, connected with the Crusades or in the Holy Land, connected with the various administrations. My characters at the beginning of the novel are only 9 and 12 years old. They're kids. And in fact, the novel is basically about their lives and how their lives unfold in the face of extreme, brutal events that disrupt their beginnings and shove them into a life of wandering, of escaping, of constantly being oppressed as they move from spot to spot. They are originally with a group of jongleurs, a troupe involving a troubadour, and they perform in villages. They do acts, they do poetry, they do music, but that lifestyle is brutally disrupted, and they begin to flee. But that setting of the troubadours and the whole culture that goes along with it follows the story through in many ways.
Would you describe your book as a religious novel?
No, it's not a religious novel in any sense. They simply belong to the persecuted Cathar faith. The main characters are what drives the novel. It's their trying to escape, it's their development as human beings, their relationship between each other and the people around them, and how they have to cope with problems and grow from them and become mature in the process. That is the thrust of the novel.
As I read this, details of the novel, as the rich details of the novel unfolds, a mystery begins to emerge. And of course, can you tell us about this without giving too much away?
Yes, the mystery is presented quite early in the novel. It involves an old manuscript which is given to the main character for safekeeping. to be passed to a very famous personage, but it itself is a very dangerous manuscript because it contains information related to the Knights Templars and the Hospitallers, which could lead to serious problems and death. But it is entrusted to the care of my main character, and it brings their lives to danger points on numerous eventual events that take place.
If someone were not particularly interested in 13th century history, what would make them want to read your book?
Well, it is a personal story, after all. The history is there. I'm a history buff, and I love the history. But the history does not dominate. When I first researched historical novels, and I read many of them, I realized that there's a whole range of types. Historical novels that are extremely obsessed with the history and very little plot. Others that use history only as a gimmick, and it's the love story that dominates. I chose the middle ground, where the history is accurate, it's back there, but the story is the important thing.
Well, thank you very much, and I do hope this interview has given you, the viewer, a strong incentive to purchase Mr. Mussell's novel, The Last Crusade. I think it would make a perfect gift.
Thank you very much, Cass.